Yeah, gotta be the one.
All right, everybody. So I'm going to record our little session, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So this is going to be kind of our little debrief, and then maybe I'll collect some of your notes and make sure that I get the video or the audio from y'all. And I hope that when you leave, that this kind of gets some ideas going. But first, maybe one or two representatives from the group. We'll just kind of go around, and I just want you to hit on, if you can, give us the baseball card summary of kind of what the major heavy hitters were. What were the major barriers? What are the sort of the takeaways that we want other group members to get? And obviously you all had different types of restaurants. I don't know if you noticed. The Caboose was sort of more of a fast panini and coffee place. The Tamarack was a diner, so the lunch and dinner sort of lunch and breakfast and lunch sort of thing. Archie's was a little bit more of that fast casual style with Tex-Mex, and then Seventh Lake House was a little bit more of that sit-down dinner. So,
and when you say like touch on like important things, you mean like detrimental things, or like just like things that were repeated over and over that you kind of caught on?
I think
just important.
Both of those details. Things, yeah. To this group, and so that we all kind of know what we heard, and we can kind of chew it over. Any group feel comfortable going first?
I'll go as well.
Yeah. So I was with Alex and
speak out.
So a big thing he kind of talked about is so his distributor that he goes through is Renzi, and he's used other ones like Cisco and what was the other one, Smith Packing or something like that. And so his like decision behind his the distributor he goes through is like strictly economic. Whoever one can give him like best price and be like reliable is the one he likes to go through. And he said a big thing with all of them is travel costs. So Renzi is out of Watertown. That's a hike, and so the gas that they have to use to get up here and all that kind of stuff, he has like a pretty hefty delivery charge each time, as well as a minimum charge. He said Coke, for instance, he has to get like 15 cases or they won't even send a delivery truck up here. So that was one big thing. And another idea he said he liked that he said they were talking about it, but nothing's really went through yet, was kind of all the restaurants in the area to kind of like get rid of that travel cost, or at least like shorten it for each one of them, was to order in bulk for all of them and then kind of like split it up when it got here and like that kind of thing. So that was just like one of the bigger ideas that he was talking about at the Caboose.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was awesome in the group, and kind of like piggybacking on that. Like he wasn't really like familiar with like local products because he's not sure like about like the credibility, if it'd be as reliable, just like I guess like with safety and stuff. But he said if the quality was as good or better, he would definitely purchase more local, I think, with like his produce. But I mean, he mainly just gets like bread, like deli meats, cheese, but his like produce was tomato, basil, and onions. So he was talking about how sometimes he used the basil from here, which I think is great. So maybe, kind of like approaching that and seeing if, he would try to go more local with that, because it's right down the street, you're going to be able to get it. I think that was a big thing, but also, he's a very like simplistic menu, so he's not, overcomplicating things. So I think if it was more local, that'd be good. And kind of like with the tourist season, his restaurant is open like the same times, about Memorial Day to Columbus Day, so it's about like those peak seasons. But overall he seemed like to be in good spirits. The one thing I noticed towards the end was he's had his business for 5 years now, but it's difficult to find labor, which I think is very common with other places. So I think that's it. And just a few shortages. There was a meat shortage last year, which took an impact on him, but overall pretty good. I think we could push him to be a little bit more local with the produce, but yeah.
Yes, with us, we had just three main things that he kind of brought up. He really didn't think the food.
So you guys were Seventh Lake.
Yes.
Oh, Seventh Lake. Okay, I got you. All right, so this is one group, and then
Caboose.
kind of going off with that about how you kind of brought up like kind of like sharing when they bring up food, because he said food it was not an issue for him. They said that they really didn't see any issues trying to order food to bring it up in here. It wasn't really on his mind, mainly because of the shortage of labor. If anything, that was mainly on his head. What the issue that he thought was not enough people willing to work here, or like not enough people here to work at the restaurant, and energy cost. It was getting expensive because how they worked here was that they like whoever uses the most electricity in the area gets charged the most. But like if he's a full time resident versus someone who's a seasonal resident, obviously he's going to get charged the most. So they're kind of saying, well, that's kind of unfair. They should take into consideration for this. So that was on his mind and what was bothering him. And one thing he did point out was that he was used to ordering from Cisco, and he's like a loyal customer, so he's not going to really deviate from that. But what I kind of picked up was that they have to order a certain amount of numbers, so they don't get charged too much. Like if they order like one like bundle of food from Cisco, they'll get charged a lot because of the gas. So they had to hit a certain amount of food items in order to be cost effective. So in terms of like trying for restaurants to work together, order, trying to get their food from local produce, that's something you have to keep in mind, is that they may be at a split of like, well, like if I get half my vegetables from like the local market, but I have to order my meat from Cisco, they're going to charge me because I don't meet their quota, so they get charged more for the fuel. But like someone was saying about like if they could, like you were saying, they could split like ordering like restaurants together in the area, like, hey, how about, I need 4 things, you need 4 things, you need 5 things. If we combine, we can meet Cisco transportation quota, so we don't get charged, and kind of distribute amongst ourselves.
So Caboose said Renzi.
Yeah.
And Seventh Lake House is Cisco. Is it like sort of an exclusive thing? Was it just like I use Renzi for
I
everything?
think because Renzi gave them like the best deal
Yeah.
for like their money.
He says like he said like I said, he tried Smith Packing, he tried Cisco until like, so say he started with Cisco until they raised their prices a little too much. So then he went to Smith Packing. He said they weren't quite as reliable, and then he had, I think it was a friend of some kind, recommend Renzi, and so he went to them. He basically said like they haven't raised their prices so much that it's like above the other ones yet, so I'm sticking with them for now. It's just like a strictly economic, like whatever one is the lowest price is kind of like what we're going with.
But I think it was interesting with like the joint like delivery, because I think that would really help.
And Seventh Lake House was Cisco only, pretty much.
Cisco wasn't open to anything else.
Yeah, Jim, the owner of Seventh Lake House, he was saying that he had a really good relationship with a salesman there, and it was just more of a loyalty thing. They hadn't really done him wrong, even during like the strikes. They still got what he needed. It was more. We asked him like about if he'd be open to using more local stuff, and he said he would, but he has fears of dependability or availability, because start going back to the idea of the like the 15 crates thing needed, otherwise you get charged like an exorbitant amount. Like he was saying, I can get X, Y, and Z from like Hannah or another place, but if I need a crate of 2% milk by tomorrow or something, and I can't really just go down to the marketplace and get that at this point. Right. So he was saying that it was just more very much dependable, and they hadn't really done him wrong, so that's why he was like sticking with Cisco, because he puts in the order, shows up on time, and he has it.
Yeah, so our guy wasn't like completely like exclusive. Like he's like, we mentioned local options, and he goes, yeah, if you like find one, if you can find one, they got what I need, I'm all for it.
Yeah, especially like the quality. If the quality wasn't as good as he wanted, but he's definitely open to it. Like he's not like closed off.
When he said quality, did he just mean taste, or did he also mean like safety? And
I think
he meant both.
Yeah,
I think he meant both.
because a big that was another barrier actually, is like regulations to meet like health code and stuff. It's a little harder to meet that from local places. You can't just like go grab someone from like a random farm stand.
Yeah,
like he can't.
He was comparing it to like his like paninis versus like a Big Mac.
Yeah,
like
because he charges.
It's relatively the same amount of food. Like you're gonna get satisfied with both if you eat it. Like you're gonna be full, but at the end of the day, he knows his product is better for you and the best around, so he doesn't really have to worry too much about it.
I think he feels bad about like the price a little bit, because it's about $10, but it's worth it. for it.
Next, are you in another group?
Yeah, I'm in another group.
Yeah, we'll throw it into those other groups and then keep this going. This is awesome, Stu.
So we interviewed me, Tommy, and Tanner too. Or one, I don't know which one you want. So we interviewed the Tamarack Cafe, and the owner's name's Sarah, and she like really touched on she would grow her own garden. She has tried it before, and I don't know if she said that she got it shut down from health regulations or that she just gave up because she didn't know the implements of the health regulations, but she was open to having the local source or having her own source even in her own backyard of the cafe that she's running to have local produce or local gardening implements that she has. One thing that I found out that was different between you two is that she doesn't just have one distributor. She has all three active. So she's using Cisco, she's using Renzia, and she's using Smith Packing, but she uses Smith Packing for the meat. And then she uses Cisco and Renzia for whatever is more cost effective to her. She said once the Cisco strikes really affected her too. So she switched over to Renzia for that while they were on strike, but she's since gone back to Cisco and started using them. She says something that she would like to change about her current distributors is they're not transparent with like their pricing. They don't communicate with her as an owner. Change prices all the time, and they're not organized. Sometimes she'd get shipments from the caboose, and she'd have to walk them over to the caboose because they're right next door, or she'd get something from Fourth Lake, I think it was that you guys were.
South Lake.
Yeah. So she'd get something and have to drive it over there. So the food distributors aren't organized, which is something that the local could help with. She does have relationships with other farmers. Sydney Lee was the one that she touched on the most. She's a dairy farmer in the area. I think she said out of Boonville. But yeah, she said that she would buy a lot more local products. She really touched on eggs because she is a diner, a cafe, so she cooks a lot of like omelets and stuff like that. Like if we had local chickens around here in like a 20, 50-mile radius or so, she would really want to do something with that. Local produce is another one. Obviously, she wants her own garden. And she really touched on the biggest thing for her was bulk. It's really hard for her to find bulk pricing with these local projects that are happening. But yeah, she said like she would totally try new things on the menu if she could buy the ingredients in bulk. The winter months are when she does the most of her spending the summer months are when she does most of the spending. And then the winter months, something that I caught on was she only spends about $1,000 every 3 weeks in the wintertime. So in the summertime, she's lowballed to $40,000 and highballed to $75,000 per month. And then $1,500 per week in the winter. So she's saving a lot of money by freezing over product and using that into the winter. And that also affects her menu. So she uses a different type of bacon in the winter per se the summer. Or she won't have a Caesar salad on the menu because she can't buy romaine lettuce in bulk from Cisco. So
yeah, another thing too, like talk about the winter is the weather is something that detrimented her from building her own garden or like having her own chickens, because it's just hard to manage that up here, the inconsistency of the length of the season and also the conditions that it provides. So it's hard to base a business plan with steady growth on something that is so unpredictable. Like the one thing you can predict is that it's going to be long and unpredictable. So like that was a deterrent to like having your own garden aside from the health regulations, or like your own chicken coop. It's like, you know, it's going to be a lot of effort or almost impossible to maintain, like keep animals outside during this cold, harsh time.
Yeah, and she does communicate actively with the other owners too, because say the caboose is right across the road. They do share the outdoor seating underneath that tent in that alleyway. They started that during COVID time. She knows all the owners' names of the Screaming Eagle, the Woods Inn, Charlie Nancy, everybody like that she kept pointing out. But yeah, it was. I feel like having that distributor that could just venture around the Adirondacks per se and not kind of leave it was like what she was looking for in that. So she could find local, and then the distributor could just travel from local produce to local produce and drop off stuff, and then make the rounds like that.
To add on knowing like for the surrounding owners too, she said they would do a meet your neighbor event, and she would coordinate with the other restaurants, and they'd bring around like their popular menu items to all the customers around it. And I thought that was like a pretty cool idea.
That was last night, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool.
And then the fourth restaurant.
Sure. When it comes to distributors, just about everything has been stated. They said there's like 4 or 5 in total that they've used. I don't know how much they use, like any specific one, but they said orders are generally filled quickly. Like if they order by 3 o'clock one day, it'll be there the next day. Generally, like info on stock is available, whether truck maintenance, that kind of thing. It's good. Sometimes there's a lack of communication if something's running late or if there just isn't something for an order. But they wanted more like fresh options, like a bigger variety of things, and especially for ethnic stuff because they're like a Tex-Mex restaurant. But the thing we were really interested in, the bit about like sourcing local products, there's a want to do that. They both said, because we talked to 2 people, that they wanted.
Yeah, Fulton Chains they were talking about.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And those four. That's what we're trying to
They said they want to work
the brewery.
with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do get a lot of beer from from Fulton Chain Craft Brewery, from Lake Placid and Utica Beer Co.
somebody come to the store while we're in there.
Literally as
to
we
try
were-
their beer.
Yeah, true.
Really?
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It was Southern Tier.
Southern Tier, yeah.
Then
Not
also
local.
as we were in there, there was one of the truck drivers. He came in and he like apologized for like a delivery being late,
Mhm.
and there was also a couple of people, like a family, that wanted to come in and eat, but they're low staffed, so that was another problem they had is staffing, and they were closed today, so they couldn't serve them because of that problem as well.
One thing that we talked a lot about with them is, like I said, the local farmer kind of relationship. There's very little there. They said they don't know any of the local farmers. Now, they've only been here a year and change, so that might be part of why. But
The guy, he did mention Long Lake. He was talking to a farmer around there.
yeah,
for
and
something
that was the
local.
only one that they knew, and that was what the
Yeah.
woman said. But they both seemed very interested in meeting more.
Right.
So the suggestion we kind of had was maybe the town at some point in time can host like producer meets restaurateur kind of event, and that way there's no middleman there, and they can communicate directly and see if like, because they are going to buy in bulk. Maybe if multiple restaurants need the same produce, they can buy in bulk kind of together in a simultaneous order from the farmers directly. And we can kind of break up the chain by cutting out the middleman.
You said they were only open like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see,
Or,
so
yeah, maybe a lot. Since
little
last
less than a
summer.
year, they
They
said,
said
I think.
since last summer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a little less than a year. You're right.
see the caboose been open. So they were going on their 5th season or something like
Yeah,
that.
they're 5
Just
years.
like a little open, and we mentioned like relationships with like local farms, and he was like what local farms there are now,
Right.
kind of deal.
Exactly. The communication between the producer and the actual user that's going to then create things for the customer is very minimal, it seems like. So they want to communicate, they want to source locally, but that bridge hasn't really been built. So maybe some kind of fair is going to help. They value quality. Obviously, everybody wants quality, and locally grown stuff is probably going to have really high quality. I don't know how possible this would be, but we also said, maybe just a big community like Chicken Coop that just produces a ton of eggs. So it's going to make them a lot cheaper. But everybody needs eggs. Most people do breakfast. It's kind of a staple. So, and you can scale it up here. I don't know with your zoning and land use abilities, what's possible, what isn't, but it's an option potentially. It's a cool idea too. The different restaurants, they do communicate. I was surprised by this. I was talking to Tanner.
They all
They
usually
actually help each other out.
Yeah, they have a good relationship. They're pretty competitive, but like when something happens, they come to like a group consensus.
Yeah,
Like for example, like COVID, like they all were like, "What are we gonna do?" Like
They were
small
backing each other.
businesses. you
Yeah,
know?
I said that they were less of like competitors and more collaborators
Right.
in this
Yeah.
region.
It feels kind of like the town's an organism, and every kind of individual business is kind of like a limb. and they're kind of trying to help each other because it's better for the whole thing, which is not what we expected because we were thinking, you
They're
know,
going to be more
if you're in
cutthroat,
a
like
suburb
competition kind
of
of
New
deal.
York City, everybody's trying to screw everybody else over. It's like, how do I undercut the guy next to me? Not how do I help them and then they help me later.
What was the restaurant you interviewed called again?
Archie's.
So a difference that I found from Archie's from the Tamarack was when you pointed out that you could call at 3 p.m. and they'd have the food on the way the next day. Sarah, the owner of the Tamarack, stated that sometimes they weren't transparent and they would order a week before, and then an hour before they'd have the shipment arrive, it wouldn't come.
Yeah.
And they would call and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, it's not coming today," and then they would be SOL in a sense.
Same thing at the
I also think that part of that is because you said that the Tamarack used like different distributors.
Yeah, I don't know if that was in sense with the Cisco strike or what was happening around that time, but there was a lot of transparency lost between her and Cisco because of that.
The guy at the caboose like specifically said like he's been with Renzi, he wants to stay with them. He knows a lot of other restaurants in the area kind of like to get the companies to bid against each other. But in his eyes, like in the long run, that's not good. Like short term, that might be good for business now, but he likes the fact that he has like the good relationship with Renzi, and if he could keep it for as long as possible, like what he gets in return will usually like be on par. So I don't know if that's maybe because they just use a lot more distributors, and maybe he gets a little bit of a break because he's only really with one, so they see he's not really trying to mess around and go to anybody else, or they see that he's loyal.
Sounds like there's like this narrative with the big distributors. They're reliable and there's loyalty. Your guys and the guys, but there seems to be, if there's a weakness in the Cisco armor, distributor armor, it seems to be shipping costs and
the minimums.
There's a poor communication, a lot impersonal.
Sarah did point out though that there was certain price locking for things that she did buy, like her eggs and produce sometimes carrying over from COVID or even before that, she would get grandfathered into a price per se, and it would stay that way, and she's still getting that same price
even with the inflation.
Yes, even with inflation and everything. So
I also want to say, it seems like between everyone else here, having a local produce is not a new idea here. So it's kind of foreign to them. It's kind of scary too as a business of like to have this. Well, as they've known, has been reliable because that's been their only choice.
Yeah.
So when introduces this idea, it's kind of like they have to create a system that will work with having locally grown produce because no one's ever done it before.
Yeah.
Our guy has been open since 1980. And he's been with Cisco for over 40 years.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to change at all.
It seems like the demand for it is there. It's just a scary kind of step for them to take as a business. So,
one of the things too.
They've never had anything.
Make sure they meet code and everything.
And they can't compare to anyone else because no one else around here's done it.
They said they would do it too if they could get more of these items in bulk. Yeah, because they get so much from these shipping companies in bulk. So, the local people, it's like, yeah, we can get some cheese, we can get some eggs, we can whatever, but if it's not going to be enough to sustain them for weeks or months at a sufficient price, you get something to your door in bulk, it's one less errand you have to run or one less check you have to cut. So
kind of backing off of that, especially over like the winter time, they're keeping a lot of the product that they buy from the spring or the summer or the fall and keeping that through the cold months because they can't get the stuff that they need in the winter time.
If I can ask you a question, and then I kind of like Jimmy Neutron brain blasted, but I see a note that says like their menu depends a lot on season, and I also on the front they talked about like mud season and how they're just completely closed from October 31st to November 25th, and then again from March 26th to May 12th. So both of these times kind of like stand out a little bit to me. Do you guys do any sort of like
Johnny?
Do you guys do any sort of like seasonal festivals or anything like that? Because these times, especially like in October and then like early November, that's very much like squash and pumpkin like harvest time. And then, I mean, late March to mid-May that's like spring break time for most college students and high school students. So if you don't do events during that time, maybe planning something like an autumn harvest festival and like a spring fling kind of thing, especially around the bloom, could, you know, like add an extra, like people are saying summer tourist season, winter tourist season. If you have this kind of like autumn harvest festival, that's kind of like an autumn season, and spring fling when all the blooming happens could be like a spring season. Have more of a year-round approach.
I think it's the Maple Festival in the spring is the thing, right?
It's like in the spring. Have you ever heard of the Snort Run?
The Snort, yeah.
I'm from like Tug Hill. It's snow and dirt. People just like mess around on 4-wheelers and the
Oh,
mud behind us. People like pull up to that. Like a lot of people.
I don't know these things, but I do know that late October, early mid-November, when all the pumpkins and squash just start, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Finger Lakes region, out in like Dryden, there's just so many, and they're everywhere, and everybody's happy about it. So
Are you talking about like to bring people in, or?
yeah, either to bring people in. You could do Oktoberfest if you want.
Yeah. My only issue with that is
You better keep them.
So I think we veered a little bit more into the tourism and foot traffic, which is of course important for local businesses and is of course like a necessary component part. And
Especially
it does
to open up those two kind of like the closed mud season kind of things to like open them up potentially. Thinking of a nutcracker.
So I wanted to introduce everybody. This is Connie Perry.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Connie is the Clean Energy Climate Smart wing of the Inlet Area Community Task Force, and she's the president of the Inlet Area Community Task Force. She's also a local business owner, and I don't know, just all sorts of stuff.
I didn't know if you had stopped by because I had to run to the dentist this afternoon, so I was like, "Oh," and I saw you down here. So,
SUNY Cortland alum, right?
What's that?
You're a SUNY Cortland alum too.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Your business, the kayak rental?
Yes.
Yeah, we met last year.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, both my undergrad and my graduate degree were from Cortland.
She's from Western Adirondacks too. So for
Yeah,
the
there you go.
Rochesterians. So I guess for the final takeaway, I guess I'd like to go around and just kind of take a second to think about it. But you know, we are, and I am, and we are trying to figure out the next intervention, right? What is the focus of study? What is the focus of program creation or project creation? And kind of where do we make inroads? We know the goal is to connect local farmers and local businesses. We know now what these barriers are. And so now we need to like look at looking into viable solutions. Where along the food chain is it on the production side? Is it on the distribution side? Is it on the community side? Is it on the restaurant owner side? Is it on some other place? So maybe in like 2 or 3 sentences, if I'll go around and just give me the takeaway as far as like where you would, if you had a finite amount of money and a finite amount of time, what would be your poison dart? Where would you hit it? So I'll start.
I thought what he brought up before about the meet and greet, kind of having like something where the producers and the business owners come together and kind of meet face to face like that. I thought that'd be a good idea to try and get them together.
I like it.
Yeah, it's like kind of on the same thing. Yeah, like kind of on the same. Kind of like on the same topic. Like, I mean, we know there's local farms. I mean, she's right up there, and like a lot of the businesses here, like at the caboose, like I said, he didn't. He's like, what local farms? Like, there are none. Is pretty much what he said.
Yeah, that's
like,
an hour away, just so you know. I just came from where she's from. Yeah.
Different definition. It is local in a sense.
Yes.
The most local, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say. No, you're good. Also, like on the topic of like regulations, like I don't know how you would solve it, but it's kind of like a time crunch too, because going local, you have to like look into that and figure out like, are they all good on the regulations, that kind of thing. Going through somewhere like Renzi, you already know, so you can just order it. And so I don't know. It's tough.
I think like basically what our situation was like they said that they would go local, more local, if that they could get the same product in bulk. And so I think the solution might be like on the production side, if like the farms that are like local could mass produce a certain type of product or a certain few products, then it would make it like, and we talked about like sharing products or sharing orders to lower cost. Like if a farm could mass produce certain types of products, because I know land is limited, so if you could just focus it on one or two things for the community, then that would probably be the best way to go about, maybe.
And there's historical models for this, both producer and consumer co-ops. So maybe kind of look at, is there something to learn from history for local growers or local consumers that could help as well?
Yeah, Tanner has like a really good like inside to outside approach for it. Like I was thinking more outside to in. I know that you guys are already starting like the projects with the indoor farms, the vertical farming and everything like that. But how can we get that around the Adirondack Park, and how can we sustain that to be a good model for a company that would be able to distribute around? I think that's the way I was thinking of it, was a solid distributor that could distribute locally sourced products.
Kind of to go off that, I mean, I understand that only in the past couple of years, like the town of Inlet has really gotten internet, but I know that he was talking before about just social media or just media in general being like a really good tool to like market your brand and market your products, especially with a lot of the young kids either leaving the area because there's not a whole lot for them, or just leaving right out of college because they're exposed to other areas that have so much more. The social media platform is definitely going to be useful for relatively everything that you want to market. I mean, if you're able to get the product out on there and just really kind of like spread the idea of like what you're trying to do, like what you're trying to build, like the cause that you're trying to like strive for, like I think a lot of people will come together and help out with that, and it'll make like a big impact.
Yeah, going off the social media aspect, that definitely can help an impact. But I also think what Tanner said earlier, with just having like the local farm, having them like just focus on one or two things that could help be a sole distributor and benefit like these local businesses.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I think you should maybe focus on one product. So, like, I was thinking of like something that all of these places use, like tomatoes. If you were to just make tomatoes, produce a whole bunch, everything like just tomatoes, everyone in the area would go to you for their tomatoes, and then starting small at tomatoes, maybe grow to other products as, you know, depending on how well that works, or just build a tomato company or whatever is easiest to grow. I feel like, I don't know, that's just the first food that came to mind that all these places probably use.
No, yeah, it's the number one product at the caboose. Is tomatoes.
So I think that would be more better than a plethora of options, which is great that you have that. But if you're known for as the tomato people, you're like, I don't know.
Name of the company,
Yeah,
the tomato people.
LLC. It's kind of similar, but I feel like this would really help foster like a community aspect. So not only would it help like the restaurants, but also just like local people here. But I don't know if you guys do like a farmers market. But I feel like that'd be like a great idea, because then you could have those farmers and like the local like business owners could be a part of it too. So like, you know, like the little shops, they could have, you know, selling, you know, like bracelets or mugs or something. And then having like the different farmers come so they can meet and then also, you know, like sell their goods, and, you know, they can kind of be aware and kind of just help with that networking. But not only will that like, you know, like help bring business, but then also just like community members here getting access to more fresh food, because, you know, if they have to, you know, wait on this every week, or you know, drive an hour away to get something like that, you know, it could be, you know, like just during the summer or something. I know at least where I'm from, they do a lot of those and they seem to do really well. So that always could be like a option.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess starting off, probably pretty important to show everyone like the quantitative data you can have. a lot of people are worried about like the pricing or like the bulking issues, but if you can show to them that your type of vertical farming can produce the necessary amount of produce that they need to meet their demands, you can show it to them with number and data, which is really huge for like scientists and for like business people. Kind of prove to them like, hey, you can trust us. Here's the data. Here's the evidence. We can meet your demands. And then from there, it can really grow if people start catching on, which could lead to something bigger, like you guys are saying, of like vertical farming industry, which could be really big.
I think a big thing, like a lot of people mentioned, that I think would benefit everybody and also the restaurant we were at was just networking more. Because talking with Jim about like connections with local farmers or other restaurants, he's mentioned like all the people he knew were either retired or had left or had passed away. So he was very much like he didn't give the impression that he was in contact much with the other restaurants, and he was he's also further up the road than a lot of the ones in town. So I think just having an event where restaurant owners can network together with farmers or just with themselves, I think would be beneficial, just so they can all see if like ways they can help each other and collaborate.
Yeah, I've kind of been the pitcher of ideas, just kind of throwing everything. But yeah, I mean, Jesus help me. With establishing that connection between the producers, the restaurateurs, potentially killing those dead seasons with some sort of autumnal and spring events, or the community chicken coop. All it takes is probably like 300 chickens for the whole place, which is much less
One
than
per resident.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody can get their own chicken.
it's much less than you think it is. It really is. I've been in a building with about 10,000, and it's not nearly as big as you think it is. It's a much smaller spot. And yeah, you have to adapt to like the modern information age. Like the Archies moved here with no social media, and that was like 10-ish months ago. And now they have they advertise specials on Facebook. They have an Instagram page. Like they're reaching out. It's not huge. They have a local paper, little advert, but they're reaching out. It's necessary, especially with the younger people. So there's a lot of things that could be done, I think.
As you were talking, just when you were thinking tonight and keep talking about this, think about scale. Like, so there's the local, like what's grown in this building, but it's not just that, right? It's also the wider local, the producers in Mohawk Valley or in Boonville. So think, don't. It's good to think about what's going on in here, but like there's probably a limit to how much that could be scaled up. But also think about the wider local as well when you do further brainstorming.
Yeah, you're not going to vertical farm for a few hundred people. You need scale.
I'm going to take the last word because I'm a hog like that, but I just want to thank everybody for coming down, for asking wonderful questions. I followed up with the 4 restaurants, and all of them said, well, 3 of the restaurants, but they all said that y'all were attentive and attuned and interviewed quite well, and that your energy filtered out to them. They were like, I'm excited about this. And so if nothing else comes out of this, just the excitement and the energy and the thoughts, and that in and of itself can be a great product. You all have my card. You got to meet Connie and Chris and Steven and Hannah, which is probably about half, I'd say, of the IACTF group. So there's other people here that are interested in bringing you all back and hearing what you have to say, and so please reach out. And any ideas that come out of this, we're here to listen to more ideas. And if y'all want future internship here, y'all want to learn about what it's like to live here, you want to find a job here, you want to maybe the Adirondack Park is something interesting to you, and you want to start your business here or work remotely and move here or something else, this is a cool place to live. So I'll put a plug in for that too, because I think sometimes communities like this get overlooked by young people who want to go move to large cities or some other kind of very exciting places. And I understand that. I'm a person who did that, moved out to Colorado, but I can also put a plug to say this is a very special place. The Adirondacks have a lot to offer, and don't overlook it as you enter the working world after college or whatever your next steps are. It's a really cool place to be. So.